Welcome nerds! Here we are again following the recent upload of the Dante DX version statues review. We have his twin brother Vergil, and yet again another success and another statue that's too beautiful to describe. But we're certainly going to try. From his proper humanoid first showing, Vergil, twin brother to Dante, the lead antagonist of Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening, and I suppose the cause of Dante's Awakening? Vergil, a man in relentless and self-defeating search of power, is showcased expertly here. Prime 1 has yet again managed to avoid disappointing anyone when recreating these nostalgic and beloved characters. Vergil being quite a bit more stoic than Dante's boisterous nature, we have a much more muted and tame statue from Prime 1 Studio here. But that did not stop them from punching it up with even more detail and, strangely, elegance. We started back with Dante's review and now it's Vergil's turn, so let's get started. This is the Ultimate Premium Masterline Series Vergil Deluxe version 1/4 scale statue from Devil May Cry 3. Damn crazy long titles, but I always feel like I need to put that in there. As this is a DX version statue, it comes with a lot of extra parts, so we better just get on with it or we'll be here all day. As always, we'll start with the base and work our way up. A very similar base to Dante's, like it's basically the exact same. It is Agni rather than Rudra that's crumpled under Vergil's feet, but they are demonic twins. Anyway, much like what I said with Dante's base, this one is also unlike most of Prime 1 bases, and is somewhat minimalist in comparison with the other lines. But again, this base alone brings a whole array of new details and gore, from the crumpled and defeated Agni's demonic body and the serrated blade to the cracked stones at the bottom with the human skulls around the back. Starting with the rocking skulls, on this statue the skulls are only seen around the back of the base alongside the cracked Timnigru pillar, and what appears to be a rusted and broken down blade protruding from the rock at the back. The texturing on this piece is incredible, showing an insane amount of weathering and breakdown. Beautiful. The design on the pillar as well is exceptional, and the paintwork is astounding throughout every part of this base, and I cannot find a single thing I would realistically complain about. The skulls alone look so detailed here. Eerily, I just noticed that they all seem to be missing the bottom halves of their jaw. Is this because Rudra and Agni do all the talking? Anyone's guess.
What should we do? How do I know? We need to come up with something. Brother, our guest is sighing. Sigh? What is sigh? Well, a sigh is when...
Enough already!
Around the front we have another piece of that pillar just under Agni's arm, which leads us into Agni himself, or what's left of him. The fire demon Agni appears in DMC3's 5th mission alongside his wind-wielding twin Rudra as a boss battle, and unlike most bosses for DMC3, all they want is to be gracious hosts.
We must entertain our guest. You're right, we have to be gracious hosts.
But Dante makes it clear to them that he wants to continue his adventure in the demon-infested tower. Upon hearing this, the Gate Guardians begin to battle Dante, only to be defeated. Now, unlike Rudra from Dante's statue, Agni has no bullet holes that I could see, and instead features many more slashes from a bladed weapon, and more gashes all over the demonic body. Some being small slashes, others being open wounds, and even cross-shaped gashes. The demonic body is immaculately sculpted, and the amount of texturing to emphasize the rough-looking skin is incredible. We have the same barnacle-like armor pieces that run around Agni's left arm on the front face of the statue, which has been painted a dark silver and metallic colour. There are also some smaller barnacle-like parts on the right arm, but not as many as the left. But they are detailed incredibly on both arms. The multiple shades of red used throughout the body for the coloration of the skin is perfect. The shading continues to emphasize veins, muscles, and the ridges of the demon's knuckles. Surprisingly, the colour of the body also doesn't take away from the glisten of the blood oozing from the gashes left by Vergil's blade, and still stands out on its own and looks absolutely phenomenal, especially in the case with the deeper gashes on the left hand and left shoulder, in a clear attempt to defend and shield the head on the pommel of the beast's blade, which leads us straight into Agni's blade. The sword is much the same as Rudra's, wide and curved, and it resembles the design of an Arabian scimitar. Rather than a straight blade piece, it's broken into serrated segments that build up the blade into a more saw-like appearance. The colour of Agni's blade is representative of his elemental affinity, fire. The segments are made up of mostly metallic, muted red-orange paint, with deep grooves in the texturing and very nice weathering on the silver tip portions of the upper edges. The hilt is sculpted really well, and the paint application on the entire portion is well done. The weathering and ornate design in the handguard is great as well. The blade's grip is mostly occupied by Agni's gigantic demonic hand, but that leads us into the most interesting part of the blade, the pommel, which is technically the detached head of the demon Igni, where all that incessant chattering comes from. I'll say it again, who keeps having multicolored offspring with Thanos? How many people do you need to have a ballsack chin before you're satisfied, you titanic prune? So much for balance. Anyway, the face itself is very nicely sculpted with the same reddish paint used in the body. The lighter tone to the red eyes is done brilliantly as well. The head also has a great looking golden casing around the back end, making the head almost seem like a jeweled pommel for the blade. Again, very nicely done. Overall, it's a great base, other than a very small chip near the back of the right side of the statue. I have no real complaints. Finally, we can move on from the base and all its glaring similarities to Dante's base. Do you know how hard it is to be constructive in writing a review when there's this few changes in between? Starting with Vergil's rather elegant looking leather knee-high heeled boots. I love the immense detail here, the sculpting, the immaculate texturing really adds life to the leather look, and adding the weathering to the leather around the shin area is great. I love the way that they crease between the foot and the leg portion as well, fantastic. The smoothed out strap parts just below the knee are done really well, the two buckles on the outside of each leg, and bringing the look all together, this intricately designed stitching around it, the edging over the knees, absolutely beautiful. Moving up the legs, we have these hyper detailed trousers or pants for the US viewers. I honestly don't know what sort of trousers these are supposed to be, but they look fantastic with all their segmented parts looking eerily similar to snake scales. The coloration, the texturing and weathering are great again, no complaints at all. Obviously we have more brilliantly sculpted creasing in the trousers, but I'm honestly not talking about two men's crotches in one day. You can see what I mean, it's absolutely great, but we're not gonna discuss it. Anyway, moving on. Vergil's upper body. Look, I know I was gushing over Dante's coat, but this is insanity. Are you seeing the detail on the inside of this coat? I literally had to take pictures of this while it was still in its box to send to my collector and non-collector friends because I couldn't believe how detailed it was. I've never seen anything like it, or at least not done as well as this. Anyway, I'll come back to that. Like Dante, I'm going to cover the under portion of the body, then we'll move on to the coat because there's plenty to cover. Starting from the bottom of the torso, we have this amazingly detailed leather-like vest or tunic, which has been beautifully sculpted here, and again the stitching is on full display, emphasizing the different sections and colour choice for the paint is spot on, contrasting well with the rim of the coat itself. And then we have Vergil's ascot. Yes, like Fred from Scooby-Doo, our man wears an ascot, although Vergil does wear it a lot better, and it does add to his overall regal look. A little plain on this part with little to no texturing, but the sculpted folds are well done and the coloration is great. The only thing I find odd is that neither Dante or Vergil have a jewel here, which I'm pretty sure was a pivotal part of Devil May Cry 3's story. Oh well. On to the main event. This incredibly detailed and ornate coat. Unlike Dante, Vergil sports 3 separate coattails. Fancy bitch. The main body of the outer part of the coat is painted with a metallic looking blue paint, which really makes this stand out, even among others in my collection. The leather-like texturing is more muted here, but the weathering more than makes up for it, and the accents around the entire body of the coat brings it all together, with the gold trims around each section and gold accents around the forearm and up the back of the arms and down the back at either side. It just looks great. It flows around the edges of the tie at the back and down each coattail edge, Just absolutely beautiful. And then we have more accents with the pale blue serpentine pattern that runs around the entire body of the coat itself. Around the collar, over the shoulders, down the right coat tail to the very bottom. Beautifully detailed. I honestly cannot stress that enough. The same pale blue is also used to contrast the accent of the gold trims as well, just to give it that little bit of elegance and flair. And each of the buttonholes is made up of the same pale blue stitching on the left side of the coat to coincide with the silver buttons on the right. Moving back to the forearms, we have these incredible looking golden accented straps that run from the end of the sleeve up to the elbow, and each and every one of them is amazing, with the golden button at the center of each just a real standout part. All this, and I haven't even mentioned the sculpting of the coat, and the way it flows and bunches to emphasize the sort of dominance that Vergil himself has. The way that it bunches underneath his arms and stretches out across his back is great. Then we have the flow of the coattails, all of which are flowing to his right side, and the center coattail itself is folded over, revealing even more of that phenomenal paintwork on the underside of the coat. The only downside to this is it seems to be a fair amount of mispainting on the edges of the coat, which is disappointing. It's not noticeable unless you're looking for it though, and I also did notice it appears to be paint chips in the edges as well. The weathering and the texturing is phenomenal though, so this does make up for it a little. Okay, I've delayed long enough. Time to have a thorough look at this design on the inside of the coat. The inside of the coat itself seems to be more silk-like and smooth in comparison to the outside, and has this absolutely insane and highly detailed golden flower blossom pattern running from the bottom of the inner lining, which bleeds into a silky red, while still keeping a faint pattern that runs up the body. I cannot believe how detailed this part is, and I really hope that pictures and video cover this with as much detail as it deserves. Honestly, this coat is a standout piece. Even among every single piece I've ever purchased from Prime 1 Studio, it's honestly beautiful. Okay, enough about the coat. I know a lot of people have been looking to hear about the weapons and switch out parts. As we all know, Prime 1 loves to have two options when buying pieces like this, a regular version and then the DX version, which comes with a vast array of additional parts and switch outs to display. How the hell people house these spare parts is beyond me. I'm struggling myself. Doesn't stop me buying the DX version statue though, does it? So we'll get to cover all of the additional parts in detail. Thankfully, we don't get as many as we did with Dante, so that should make cover them slightly easier. We'll begin with the regular version switch-outs, then move on to the parts which only come with the DX version. So for the regular version, you get the Yamato blade, a dual pose centered ebony pistol, one of Dante's iconic twin pistols, and another hand holding Yamato's scabbard. For the DX parts, there's only one additional part, and that comes in the form of an imposing force edge blade. So let's cover the blades and switch outs individually. With the exception of the Yamato, all the parts piece in with ease, and I had no issues with the majority of them. But I do worry about the weight of the Yamato and force edge. Those magnets are quite strong. More so in the Yamato, but the fact that a small magnet is holding this relatively heavy piece in place does worry me a little. So we'll start with the scabbard. The scabbard itself comes as a part of the left-hand switch-outs, gripped by Vergil's fingerless leather, greenish-brown gloves. The detail of these gloves alone is great, and then you see the vein coloration on the back of the hand. Very faint, so I don't think the camera will really pick up, but it's a nice additional little touch. The hand part is also very nicely painted with that signature Prime 1 translucent skin color paint. The scabbard itself is nice and somewhat light in weight. The texturing is great and adds to the high quality of the part. A nice golden ringer in the sheath opening, and a golden ribbon made out of what I can only assume is PVC, so it's less likely to break. The cord part is very well textured, but I did notice a flaw here which was a little disappointing. The paint application seems to have gone a little bit out of the window. It's a minor gripe, but it is a bit annoying when you're looking at it. At the other end, we have this nice sort of lightning bolt design on the scabbard and an emblem on the other end. Very nice overall, and looks even better with the Yamato on display. The next left-hand part is awesome, the dual pose centric ebony pistol. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this one because we would be here for ages describing the gun, and I'm not exactly too knowledgeable about guns. We Scottish people will just tend to chase you down the street with a chainsaw. Anyway, this is Dante's iconic pistol, which we've seen on DMC5 Dante statue, as well as the more recently reviewed DMC3 Dante. Starting with the grip, we have the portrait of the gunsmith who made the gun, Nell Goldstein, who Dante meets during his time as Tony Redgrave, hence the signed part stating, "For Tony Redgrave," carved into the side of the pistol. Very nice matte black paint has been used to cover the majority of the pistol, small alterations in the sights and the muzzle of the gun, and a silver on the trigger. But on the other side of the pistol, as I mentioned, we have the portrait of Nell in the wooden effect grip, and a nicely signed ebony and ivory carved into the opposite side, along with 5 scores next to it. Absolutely awesome. Moving over to the right hand, the Yamato, Vergil's personal weapon and a very iconic blade, which was heavily featured in Devil May Cry 3, 4, and 5, and is pivotal to Nero's story. The blade itself is fairly simplistic in its design, what appears to be an attempt to replicate the look of a differently hardened and folded Damascus steel katana. The darker and lighter shades of the metal seem almost lazily done, and do not match on both sides, which isn't really a complaint, and the fact that the blade here is actually made of metal more than makes up for that. Yes, I can confirm that the blade is metal, cold to the touch and fairly heavy. The handguard and the chap are very nicely designed. Similar floral pattern to the inner lining of the coat is used here, and it absolutely looks fantastic with the golden metallic part used and the black paint used in a small part to emphasize the finer details. This is used on both the top and bottom of the handguard, and the grip is made to look like a woven fabric, and the pommel is just a simplistic gold cap. Thankfully, because this part doesn't have an alternative arm, it won't be necessary to remove it, because once this is in, the magnet is super strong, and it is really difficult to remove, and I would guess that it would likely end up scratching the awesome metallic blue coat, so please be careful when assembling and disassembling this one, because it was a pain for me. Now onto the DX weapon, the Force Edge, the main goal of the villainous Arkham in Devil May Cry 3. This sword is, put simply, the unawakened devil sword Sparda. It is pretty unremarkable on the bladed portion, unlike swords such as the Rebellion, but it does have some nice markings and weathering. One side is more weathered and beaten than the other though, which is kind of odd, and I can confirm that much like the Yamato, it is made of metal. Fairly cold, fairly heavy, it's definitely metal. The handguard is very nicely designed with this stark silver W shape, with a lighter shade surrounding it, and a very nice golden emblem on the inside. The grip is another excellent part, with sort of woven metal design running into the skull top pommel with a spiked tip. Not hyper detailed, but very nice. Much like Dante's statue, we also get these other additional parts with the DX version. These 2 logo displays that allow us to display the Devil May Cry logo in both the EU version and the North America, Japan versions of the logo. Very nice details here, like I said with Dante's review. I love the stark white number 3 against the logo on this one. I especially love that they've managed to keep the flying Dante part in the logo on the side. But again, I don't understand why Prime 1 put 2 of them in each of the packaging. 4 logos just to clutter the display. The painting, the texturing, the weathering is all fantastic on these logos though, so that's definitely a good point. Onto the heads. Starting with the 2 standard or regular heads that come with both versions of the statue. All of the heads, much like Vergil's left arm pieces, keys in easy and are not a struggle to remove, but holds very well in the magnetic recess. The normal head, which features Vergil's fully swept back hair look, is awesome, my personal favourite of the 3 heads. The silver white swept back hair really adds a lot of emphasis to his stoic sort of regal and fierce look. All the facial features are absolutely spot on, from his furrowed brow to the way his mouth is positioned, showing no real emotion outside of mild annoyance. The blue eyes have been done perfectly as well, and as I said before, the signature Prime 1 Studios translucent skin tone paint has been applied to perfection here. Very difficult to see in certain lighting, but that's the case with most Prime 1 pieces. Lighting is everything. Moving on to the next regular edition or standard edition head sculpt, we have his half swept back pose reminiscent of the scene where, spoilers here, Vergil defeats Dante at the top of the Temenigru Tower, and swiftly pulls his now wet hair back with Dante's red jewel in his hand.
Might controls everything, and without strength, you cannot protect anything, let alone yourself.
such a badass moment. The part that sets this one apart from the other head is the two slightly curled spikes on either side of his forehead. Looks very rough in the game, but it looks absolutely awesome here. Now, this head sculpt is made to be paired with the dual pose with Dante, so it does look a little odd if you have Vergil standing alone with it, as his eyes are not centered and they instead look to the side. Other than that, the expression is almost the exact same as the other regular head version. Same with the paint application. The DX version head, definitely not my favourite here. I get why it was made for the DX version, but I can't see anyone using this over the other two heads. This head sculpt features Vergil with his hair down around his face and really showcases the twin effect between Vergil and Dante. Yes, he's still stoic and borderline emotionless, but the resemblance is spot on here. The facial expression is the exact same as the other two head sculpts, but the hair is down, bringing the emo Dante look over to Vergil. Now, for a bit of a complaint of sorts, I mentioned this in Dante's video as well, while it's not noticeable in production pictures, the hair on these head sculpts is a silver white. And I know what you're about to say, that's how Dante and Vergil's hair is described in the games, but silver, this silver, is really off-putting for characters. It's much more noticeable on Dante than Vergil, but it's definitely not a great choice of paint for the characters. And I've spoken to a few collectors already who plan to send them away to painters to get repainted to correct the colouring. Kind of annoying, but fairly easy to overlook depending on where the pieces are displayed. And as always, the height, width and depth, which, like most Prime 1 pieces, can vary depending on what parts you choose to display it with. So we'll go for an approximate maximum on each. For the height, it comes to a total of 69 centimeters tall, standing just slightly taller than Dante's 67, probably because Dante's a slouch. The width varies quite a bit here, between 56 centimeter in front facing, but this can be reduced if you're going for the dual pose with Dante. The depth also changes a bit, with it only being 37 centimeters deep as a standalone, but it can balloon to 55 centimeters with Dante. Now, the same as the Dante review, I kept mentioning a dual pose. This pose features both of the twins, Vergil and Dante, side by side doing their iconic jackpot pose. Due to the size of this, it's not easy to feature on a turntable, so I will do my best to showcase it as best I can. And there you have it, the two badass Nephilim twins ready to take down any demon who gets in their way. The guns tilted to pair up next to each other. With this, it finally brings our review to a close. As always, Prime 1 Studios have absolutely knocked another one out of the park, with another addition to their expanding gaming statue lineup. I would honestly say that these two have come out better than DMC5 line, with the exception of Nero, and I honestly can't wait to see what character they cover next. Oddly enough, I would probably order a statue if they made one for the 2013's DMC Devil May Cry version of Dante. I honestly enjoyed that game a lot, but I highly doubt we'll see anything from that ever again. But this piece is absolutely perfect for my ever-expanding collection, and is an absolute must-have for any Devil May Cry fan. But that's it, the end of the review. Thank you so much for watching if you got this far. If you have any thoughts on this statue or this review, please leave a comment, and if you liked or disliked the video, you know what to do. If you didn't find my rambling too irritating, then please feel free to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. Iconic. No, I'll do it.